Hello everyone and welcome back to Code Escuela. Join me in my potato cam as we discuss another episode of Excel to Blazor wherein we convert an Excel template into a Blazor application. So uh, for this one, I'm just going to highlight how I did or worked on the project for this one. So I've selected a template which is this one, which is called monthly company budget, wherein the purpose of the template is for you to track the expenses or operating expenses or personal expenses, entire budgeting of your company. Okay, so uh, where did I came up from this template, or where did I get this template? So basically it's when I just select new here, and from one of the available templates. So if you filter it by this business type, you should be able to see this one, or if not, then you can just search for it. And for example, this would be the template itself, and then just click create, then you should be uh, getting this template. Okay, so first off, uh, of course, we'll have to analyze what parts of the template will be storing or capturing in our application as data or store data in our database. So uh, again, this time around, the things that we will be using for this one would be a Blazor as our front end and SQLite as our database that we'll be using to store our data. Okay, so first off is upon inspection of this template, we will see that it has its by default it's sort of like its default dashboard wherein you can see a summary of uh, the totals for the entire month. But with this one, this template is quite limited since it only allows you to capture uh, the budget items, in this case the income, the personal expenses, the operating expenses, but it doesn't allow you to specify what period it is from or for. So that's kind of the limitation for this one. But I assume that if someone is using this one, then they'll be having multiple tabs that are uh, being added per period or per specific month year. Okay, so at the bottom, you'll see that there are four tabs here. The monthly budget would be the first tab that shows you a summary of your uh, budget items, and the top one would be this one for income and expense, and then the middle one would be a graph showing a comparison of your income expenses by estimated and actual. Okay, and then at the bottom you'll have this table that shows five highest operating expenses. Okay, so next to this tab is you have this three tabs also. So this one would capture your specific budget items. So basically you have three categories. You have the income, personal expenses, and operating expenses. Okay, so with this one, looking at this one, these three tabs, you will notice that we need to capture these budget items by type. Okay, and then capturing its name or description, its estimated value, and its actual value. And then these two other columns would be just a calculation based off of these captured fields, okay, or columns. So now it's the same pattern for, yeah, the rest of these other categories. Okay, so now with that, we'll need to capture these items, okay, these data. So let's head to our project itself. So again, this is a MudBlazor specific Blazor MudBlazor project template. Okay, and so uh, let's just quickly run to show the final uh, product or output of this application so that you'll have an overview of the application itself. So uh, let's just wait for a sec here. The application should load by now. Okay. So now, as you can see, we have here our Blazor equivalent, or the Blazor application of this template. Now going back here. So what I did here is I kind of rearrange the sections. So this one would match our summary, monthly budget summary tab here that shows you the totals, and then the graph, and then the top 5 operating expenses. So here we have our graph that shows the comparison between estimated and actual for income and expenses. So these data would come up from, again, the summaries for here. You have these two tables here. The top one would be the summary for the month of March. So this would be the current or the latest month that we have in our data. And then the bottom table here would be the top 5. Again, I think I have missed that titles for each of the tables. So it should be that the top 5 operating expenses, which I failed to add on this one. Maybe it's an exercise. You can add that one here. Okay. So again, showing you top 5 of those items. And then going through the sections on the left side here, we have our menus that uh, would be the equivalent of our tabs here that allows you to input the data for our items by category. Okay. So, and then there's also this one. So this one, again, what I did is, as part of each category that we add, so we will allow the user to set up their budget items. Okay. So what happened now is that you can set that up here. Okay. So depending on the budget item type, you will, or you can add or edit this one. So if you want to add, then you can set the name and then specify the category. We have 3 categories here. Okay. Of course, you can also edit. Okay. So now, first thing that we need to do for this one, or I did for this one, is to set up this budget item types. Okay. So here, let's focus on our solution here in the solution explorer. So I've organized this in a way sort of like a clean architecture-ish of some sort. So here we have our several folders that you might notice. You have this core, which would be the equivalent of like sort of the domain, wherein you have your entities and then some other stuff that will be part of your uh, business rules. Okay. So two entities that I have as part of our entities here, or as part of our core. So the first one would be this budget type item, which would capture our specific budget types. Okay. And then we also have our category, which is an enum, which would be this one. So we have our income, personal expenses, and operating expenses. Okay. So now again, going through the process of building this one up, first, of course, you have to add your dependencies or tools. With this one, we have used Entity Framework, EF Core, and using the migration. So first off, you create your entities here, and then in your infrastructure layer of some sort. So I've added this one as data folder, and so you need to have your application DB context also. Okay. So here you set it up. So the first thing that I've set up is the budget item type. So we need this one so that we can store this budget items types that later we'll use when we move on to the storing of our budget items. Okay, now again, you create your entity, you set it up here in application DB, you run your add migration, and then after that you update your database so that, yeah, the tables necessary for this one will, and including the database, would be created. Okay, so as part of uh, the migration process, I've also added our initial set of budget items here. Okay, budget item types, since, so that we have something to work on as as I've been going through working on this application. So what I did is just capture all of these specific items, these names here, and then added it here. So during the use seeding method, when you are setting up your SQLite during on configuring method, then you can add your seed data. It's what we call seed data, wherein you have your initial set of data so that you can use it in your application without like adding it manually after you've created your or set up your database. So yeah, you have uh, these items based off of here from Excel. Okay. Now, once we've done that, and also part of that would be the setting up of our budget item types page, wherein that would allow us to set up or add a management option or page, okay, to manage our budget item types. So this is the razor page for it. Nothing complicated here. Again, with this one, I've used the MudBlazor model as a sort of entry form instead of just using a separate page for adding and editing your budget items, since it's quite simple, or really it's just two fields. So I opted for it to use a uh, MudBlazor model. Okay, so where does, or dialog, so where did it go? It's here under the dialogues folder, and this is what compose our dialog here. It's this one. Okay, it's the same for create and edit. Okay, so again, uh, you can look at this up. It's already been on, I mean, I've already placed this on GitHub, so you can inspect this one. So nothing complicated here. So yeah, so now once I had that one done, next step would be to work on actually capturing the budget itself, or the budget items. So how did I do that? Next is identify another entity that we'll use for storing our budget items itself. So we have these two classes here, monthly budget and then monthly budget item. So navigation property for the monthly budget, the items would be under it, okay, as a list of monthly budget item. And then the item itself is composed of this class. So you have a reference to the parent monthly budget, and then the budget item type, and then some other get properties here. So I've added it here as, yeah, so that we have the option of just moving the logic of the computations for like this these two fields here, these two columns here would be equivalent to here. Okay, these two properties. Again, going through the EF core process, you add a migration and then you update your database. Of course, you also have to add that uh, setup here as a DB set properties, okay, including uh, the monthly budget item. Now that's done. Next is to actually create the page for adding the items by category. Okay, so let's let's just view my commits of how I did that. So let's jump here. Uh, Managing budget item type. Okay, so what I initially did was uh, I worked on just the income, capturing just the income items first. Okay, so what happened here is that, let's look at this one. Budget item type. Okay, so this one, invoice budget items. So first I worked on just building up the ability to add invoice items. Okay, so let's run that commit there that I did, so that we can see that I initially just did only the income tab. Okay, so again, just ignore this one. This is the dashboard before. So first we have the income. So it's quite basic, it's just an income. But if you navigate, if you notice the navigation links here, it's not yet, it's 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 uh it's categorized, but in a way that doesn't quite uh, make use of the category enums that we've added. Okay, so just to make sure that I can set up the initial functions for capturing the income, okay, or the items. So with this one, you have the option of uh, adding a new month, okay, that way. And then you can also filter the view, okay. So that would be the case. So if you do edits here, if you want to save the changes, then you'll have to click on the save changes button here to commit or save your data. So that's the general function for each of the categories. Okay, so looking back here, let's look at the income page. Okay, so it's just the income page. So let's focus on what I did here. So when you add a month, so first off is you'll get all the budget type item types based on a specific category, which in this case would be income. And from there, you add the monthly budget items based on of that category. So if you have three item types, then it will be added by default. The values would be set to zeros, the estimated value and the actual values, and then it gets saved under the monthly budget parent record or class. Okay, so I've opted for this kind of uh, way of saving the data. Instead of, one way I could suggest, or one way of looking at it is, instead of having this monthly budget item parent child, you can opt for removing just the parent one and just do this one, but you'll have to move the month within this item. Okay, so I guess that would be much easier when it comes to querying stuff. So yeah, let's go back here. Where was I? Okay, managing invoice items. uh okay, I think I've lost. So we are at B23. Okay, this one. So further recommendations for this stage of my development is function to remove an item. So you notice that there are no buttons here that allows you to remove a item. As an exercise, maybe you can add that one, see how you could do that. So again, another thing that is missing for this one is to add an item. Okay, and then next would be to filter. Okay, you what I did with this one is just to pull up the up to 20 monthly budget items. Okay, but if you are over, you have so many data but by month of monthly budgets, then it doesn't allow you to to search for that, to look for that. Maybe one thing you could do is add a last option here to like custom or find a specific month year of monthly budget. So as an exercise again, you can try to add that here as a additional function. Okay. And yeah, lastly would be when you add currently with this one, when you add a new year and month, it just lets you add it without checking for any existing year or month. So maybe as an exercise, you can try to add validation to only accept new new month, okay, instead of an existing ones. So maybe when you choose an existing month, you have the option to load that up as an option, okay. So maybe that's something that you can add to improve this the functionality of this page, okay. Now once I've done that, the next step would be to add the same function for the other categories, which is the personal expenses and the yeah personal expenses and the operating expenses. So now with that one, let's look at this one, check this one out. Okay, what I did was uh, rename the initial income razor page into budget razor page, so it becomes a single page for uh, managing of budget items depending on a category. Okay, and then what happened with this one is if we look at the budget page now, which is initially income, you can now navigate through it by category. Okay, so there is a parameter here named category, which when we try to navigate to this page first, is that we'll have to check if the category is a one of the existing categories that we have from our enums. Okay, we can't just let anyone navigate to some unknown category. Okay, oh by the way, initially this one is now we've moved to the on parameter set async instead of before we added it on the on initialized async. Okay, why is that? Because on initialized async happens only once. So we if we add it here on this page on the on initialized async, then if we navigate through, sorry, I forgot to run it. If we navigate through the different categories, then we wouldn't be able to load the budget items by specific category because the uninitialized would only run only once. Okay, now we've added it here on parameters set async, since navigation triggers this one. Okay, so that's where we want to add the uh, setting up of our monthly budget items every time we change or move to a different category in our navigation. Okay, so now we only have this single page. We don't need to add separate pages for our other categories for operating expense and personal expenses. Okay, and so what happened here is that now we have to modify our code to make to adjustments for filtering it out by the month and then the category. Okay, so and then there's also uh, there's also a way here that I did is to have this parameter load default, not just accept the monthly budget parameter. It's because when you navigate to a category, you won't know if that category is I mean you won't have a way of knowing if you're loading from a navigation or from the filter. Okay, so with this one, what happens is that if you click on income, then it would run here, And then when you filter for the budget items, you will have to load the default one since you're coming from a navigation. Here, you notice here, of course, initially we'll pass on monthly budget, but we'll have to specify the load default, okay? So looking at the navigation menu here, so we have here the budget, and then the parameter would be the different categories. And then coming up from here, we have to set our category type, okay? And then from here, our first call would be to filter out the budget items, would set this load default to true, which means that whatever is the most current monthly budget available, that will be the one that will be shown to the user, okay? So it would go through this case, okay? So get all the monthly budgets with the most recent one only, and then from there filter out the items based on that monthly budget, okay? So, or else, if not, it came off from this uh, action, choosing from this filter, then the load default wouldn't be, or would be set to false, okay? So how does that happen? So our mod select filter control here, so value changed parameter, we don't add the load default, okay? We just leave it as false so that we know that the user is looking for budget items on a specific monthly budget, okay, selected, which would fall under this one. So filter the budget items based off of the selected month, okay? Right. So I don't know if you've understood what I've been talking here, but yeah, hopefully, again, you can inspect this code on GitHub. So one recommendation for this one is, yeah, again, I think I've already talked about this, is, yeah, to add a validation for when you add a new month or year, year, okay? All right. So that is, I think, the second to the last step. And then finally, we head to our uh, last uh, feature, which would be the dashboard, okay? So let's stop this first and load the dashboard commit, okay? Now with the dashboard, let's look at the dashboard. So it would be the home page. So with this one, uh, initially my first approach would be to just do the calculations inside of this page, okay? So I added a comment here with wherein the totals that is being shown on the dashboard, especially the one on the summary totals, would be calculated directly here on this page, okay? For this one, data for this one, calculated off from here, including the graph, okay? But then again, it looks kind of messy having all of these calculations here. So I decided to move it into a separate class, okay? The only thing that you need here is for to add the, I mean, to pass in the budget items. So this summary totals class is looks like this. So all of the calculations here are being done here, okay, in the constructor, and the rest of the calculations will come off from, yeah, coming off from this initial set of calculations, okay? Now it becomes just properties, which would be the sources for our graph, okay, and this one, okay. Oops. Right. And so going back here, the one for the top 5 operating expenses would just be coming off from here. So you get, since we have already our budget items for the most recent uh, month or latest month, then we take the top 5 from it. Okay, so it's a bit, so this one, you notice that this, I have this kind of calculation. This is based off of the one that we have here, the top 5 amount. It's based on this formula. Okay, so the Excel itself has its way of calculating the top fives. But yeah, I don't know if there's a way, I mean, you can do that on without doing this, but without having this field. But yeah, I've just took that from Excel itself. So yeah, to save us the time of doing the top 5 calculations on via EF Core here directly. Okay, and so I think that's, yeah, the most of this one. So some things to consider though is that I had the trouble of trying to adjust this one to make it like uh, wider, the lines, the bars here, like the one that we have here. But somehow MudBlazor's bar chart has that limitation. So yeah, we couldn't find a way to uh, make the bars. So this is the bar chart documentation. Yeah, there's no way of making the bars a bit wider, so it would look like this. Yeah, and so the chart series for the graph is also a bit like not actually a bit hacky, since if you don't, you notice you have this uh so the data come from the graph comes from this, again setting the axis label. So you notice that I've added two empty section, I mean empty values here, empty strings on the first and then on the last. Same thing for this one, set the 0, because if you don't do that, what happens is that the graph would end up like this part here would be flushed to the left and then this part here would be flushed to the right. Okay, so it's kind of weird looking way for the graph to look. Okay, so adding the I mean, it's the empty values and labels would make it a bit centered. But the problem though is that, yeah, the bars are a bit thin on this end, so there's no way of making this a bit wider. Okay, it would be better if, yeah, we have that option for the bar chart, like this one, like for on Excel. Okay, so one thing to improve for this one also is having the option to choose what month. Okay, since this one I've just added it as the latest month that you have on your data or records. So yeah, maybe as an exercise you can do that here. So yeah, I think that sums up uh, the things that I did or how I did the Blazor app for this one. So maybe if you have some thoughts or ideas that could improve this application, or any comments or whatever that you think, so just let me know in the comments. And please don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. And so we'll see you again in the next episode. And yeah, hope to see you soon and have a great day, everyone. Thank you.